Baby beluga in the deep blue sea. Swim so wild and you swim so free. Heaven above and the sea below, and a little white whale on the go. I catch myself with Rafi on the in the car, that the kids were in the car, and it's just on, and I don't even clue into it. It's on. I'm driving to work and I'm bobbing my head to Rafi most mornings.
I
So
guess the real problem is that when you start singing it in meetings for Boltrail, that's when it'll start being a real problem,
yeah,
which I'm sure
yeah.
will come
No,
up.
it's always there. They want it all the time. Yeah. There's still. I got 4 young kids, and that's all we listen to is a lot of Rafi.
Busy,
So
busy, busy. Welcome to the show, guys.
yeah,
Good to have you guys on the
thank
show.
you.
Thank you. Exciting.
You guys are in Edmonton. We're in Toronto. We're going to have a conversation about something that you came up with, which we met briefly at the Concrete Expo, and we got chatting about it. I saw it at the corner of my eye, and I was like, okay, I need to know a little bit more about it. And then we started talking, and it was an interesting story. So here we are now. We're going to be talking about it. So let me let everybody know who we're talking to. So we're talking to Mel and Arda from Boltrail, boltrail.com. You can reach out to them at sales@boltrail.com or arda@boltrail.com. And Mel, Jarecki? Sorry.
Yes.
Jarecki, yeah, Jarecki at boltrail.com. And then you guys are all over LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook under Boltrail. And I guess basically we're going down an structural engineer path there on this show. We're going to talk a little bit of you're making the industry a little easier for a lot of people, guys. That's what you guys are basically doing, right?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
So let me do some quick shout outs. I'm wearing Gary Maier's Carpentry t-shirt. I wear a different person's t-shirt every time I do a show, so I can give them a little shout out. But I also want to do a couple other shout outs for some guys. First up is Taha from the Crewman Group. Enough respect for his crew and all the hard work they provide for clients and friends and family. Reach out to them on IG under @Crewmen Group. His number is 416-721-2348, and his email is crewmengroupinc@gmail.com. Enough respect for Taha and everybody else. Keep up the awesomeness. And of course, listen to their story right here on our show, on show number 317, show number 202, and his first appearance was show number 155. So over to you guys. Where do we want to begin with this? This is a news story, right, guys? Fairly young.
A news.
Well, fairly young story.
It is, yeah. So we actually started manufacturing it at the end of 2019, and then as 2020 started, the pandemic hit and put a big damper on our ability to, trade shows and stuff were canceled. So, once the lockdowns were lifted last year, that's when we first really started to market this thing and show this thing. Although, we were having, sales and some usage in Alberta, in and around Alberta. But we weren't able to get it really in front of people for a couple of years there with the lockdown. So
was that frustrating for you guys that you had this pen to paper sketch idea, you had a prototype, you were ready to go to market, and then market was telling you not to come to market yet? Was that frustrating, or did it give you an opportunity to fine tune it?
No, it was frustrating. I mean, fine tuning it. It took 7 years to go from an idea to a product. So it took several years to get the patents wrapped up, and then after that it was 4 years of field trials and testing and developing it. And then when you're finally ready, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go into production with this thing. And we made our first batch of product, and then the pandemic locked down everything. So, but we used LinkedIn and social media as much as we could to sort of reach out. We started getting some people using it during the pandemic. But again, it was unfortunate because we couldn't be on site, on the sites to see it being used or collect, photos and videos. So we're kind of relying on the guys using it to do that. But now things are lifted. We're going full steam ahead.
So 7 years ago, what was the light bulb moment? Like, what was it that sparked you?
Well, I had just come off of a week where I had seen several projects go sideways because of anchor bolt issues, where the structures wouldn't go over top of what was cast into the foundations.
Okay.
And schedules are out the window, cost overruns, everybody's fighting and pointing fingers, and it's pretty chaotic week. And then that weekend I was assembling a barbecue for my dad, and I was in the garage with the tools, and I was pulling the pieces out of the box out of the barbecue. It wasn't the barbecue I was marveling at, but it was all of the packaging that was holding all of the barbecue pieces in the box in perfect alignment in various shapes. They had basically done what they could to minimize the box size, and they crammed everything in odd shapes and angles, and they had these formed paper, same stuff as the Starbucks trays.
Yeah.
These formed paper things that held everything in perfect alignment in this box. And I was marveling at these pieces I was pulling out, strong and rigid and perfectly formed, holding everything in place. And I said to myself, I said, geez, why don't we have something that would hold anchor bolts in perfect alignment when we pour concrete, And it was just literally the idea came to me instantly. I ran into the house and I started drawing it out and showing my dad. I'm like, Dad, like I got this idea. Check this out, And my dad has a bunch of patents on things he's invented. So he said, geez, he goes, I don't know construction, but it's not my industry. But geez, it looks interesting. He said, why don't you go talk to the patent lawyer I use? And so I spent some time developing the idea before I went and talked to him. But that's kind of how it all came about. Was a week of really, really bad, a lot of bad mistakes in anchor bolt setting. Followed by a few hours on tools where your mind starts to wander. I guess it was blank, and then it's just the pieces coming out of that box.
Was it literally like just scratches on a piece of paper at first and trying to figure out? That's how it was, right? So that classic moment, and then you started taking some lumber, some material, and started working it.
Oh, actually, you know what? I can show. I've got the very, very first prototype.
I'd love to see it. I would love to see it. Yeah.
So it was a proof of concept prototype. We were just trying to see how things would work and fit, and then of course the idea developed from there. But
I do want to ask you, Arda, like, is that whole patent side of achieving something very difficult? Because I know that I have a lot of respect for a lot of people that are in the industry. They're the ones that are boots on the ground, hands on the tools, and working problems and trying to figure out better ways of doing things, like yourselves. I mean, but they're intimidated sometimes about the business side, about the legal side, about going down that whole path and trying to figure out, I've got this brilliant idea, but I need to now secure this brilliant idea and then get it out to market without anybody else taking this brilliant idea. How was that whole experience?
You know what? It was a big learning experience. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I would say I personally was not prepared for, when I got the idea, I remember telling my wife that this is so easy. We'll be making this in 2 years. So simple, and I was initially even thinking, hey, I could write the patent. I'll just go online and like watch some tutorials and stuff. And then, but when I talked to the patent lawyer and I actually saw the patent that he wrote, you start to realize there's a lot of like knowledge required there. It's written in a very strategic way. It starts very broad to protect everything under the sun related to setting anchor bolts. Like it's very, very broad descriptions that get more and more specific to your idea as the patent goes through. So you're closing off all the loopholes for somebody coming and steal your idea, right? So in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't write the patent because I wouldn't have done nearly a good job. But it's not overwhelming. The legal costs are a little bit high. The patent application costs are not very high. So it's not cost prohibitive to get the idea, but if you're paying somebody else to write the patent for you, there's some legal costs there that can add up. So
quite the learning experience overall.
Very much so, yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't imagine how much. It's a very simple product, but I couldn't even begin to tell you how much work it was to get it into production.
So let's talk about what is the norm right now that we're trying to improve with your product, right? So how is it typically when you get trades coming in and they're doing that anchoring system? How are they doing it now? What are they expected to do it, and how do they do it?
Well, this is the thing. Everybody does something a little bit different, right? So when I got the idea, I was thinking, geez, like there's no real standardization for this task. And I've seen guys who build really, really good templates where everything is set perfectly and it's all vertical. And then I've seen guys do stuff with, a single sheet of plywood with oversized holes. Nothing is straight when it goes in, when the concrete goes in, right? So it's all over the gamut. There's no sort of standard set way that people do this, right?
And it depends if it's Monday or Friday too.
Yeah, and it depends very much on the guy who's doing it, and how much time they have, what kind of costs they're trying to cut, things like that. So there was this sort of feeling of, well, geez, like I've seen everything, and I've seen it done really well, and I've seen it done really poor. But when you do it really well, it's very labor intensive. It's complicated and tricky, and you're putting all of this labor into building a template that you use once and throw away. So you're losing this labor. The labor is lost every time you build one of these things. And then what's being built, it's really hard to finish the concrete around, right? You're building this thing out of 2x or plywood or both, but you don't have any room to get in underneath it to finish the concrete. They're building a template and they're having to cut a big hole in the middle just so they can push the concrete in down the middle and stuff like that. So, we were seeing all sorts of stuff like that. And I thought, geez, there's got to be a way to do something that's prefab, that's adjustable, but that would take that, labor intensive component out of it, that would sort of standardize it, that would make it easy to use, give lots of ability to get the concrete in and get the vibrators in and things like that. So that's kind of where this whole thing came out of, was could we get, if we had everybody to use it, we'd have everybody setting anchor bolts at the level of the top guys who are building really good templates from scratch. So that's where we're trying to get to.
How was the very first on-site reaction when someone was trying it for the very first time? How was that experience?
Well, I wasn't allowed on site. So I delivered the product to their site.
Why weren't you allowed? Why weren't you allowed on site? Well,
it was three months or something into the pandemic.
Got it. Okay.
Right. So it was only the crew on site and everybody was masked. But I was able to drop off the product, and then from a distance, I gave them a quick demo and I left. And then a couple of weeks later, I got a call, and I was asked, how many of these things do you have? And I told them how many I had. They said, okay, we're going to take half your inventory. I said, oh, how did the use go? And they said, well, they shared an internal spreadsheet of how it went. So yeah, and that was very interesting to see. So they had accomplished the task of setting anchor bolts. It was 10 times faster. It was less than half the cost. They got 3 to 5 reuses out of the product on the job. All these bonuses and benefits. So it was overwhelmingly positive. And we're the other big thing was, they said they had way less surveying time because it went in so fast. So they saved money on surveying. And then the other really big thing was it was 384 anchor bolts that they set, and they didn't have to bend a single one of them straight after the concrete was, after things
That's
were done.
Impressive, right?
Yeah, everything was perfectly set. So, yeah.
So can we take a look, or do you have a sample there that we can actually?
I got a sample here. I got a couple.
I want people to understand. I mean, first of all, they can go to your website, and I'm sure that you've got some content on there that you can actually see it. But that's basically what you've designed. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see the end here, but we got 2 support ends on this thing that sit on top of the forms.
Yeah.
But one end slides, right? So this sliding adjustability allows this thing to sit on a form, and you just cinch it up to the width of the form. So whatever width form you have, this thing, we make it in 4 different lengths. So
what's the longest length that you have?
55 inch. So if you're doing a 4 foot wide pour, 4 foot wide concrete pour, we've got one that'll span your form.
And what's the shortest?
So 26 inch.
Okay.
So, and then, I mean, we can do custom lengths as well. It's just a matter of cutting this wood down to whatever length you want. So if you were doing a job that required, let's say, a bunch of anchor bolts set along the edge of a concrete bridge, let's say, to take that steel guardrail, and you needed one that was 16 inches wide or 15 inches wide, we can accommodate that for pallet size orders. So, it's very customizable. But just the way it is with that adjustment, as long as you got one that's longer than the width of your form, it'll sit on the form, and then it'll cinch up to the side of your form. Yeah. And then these supports, they rotate so that you can get it on. You can catch an edge no matter what shape your form is.
Yeah, I like that.
So if you have out of square forms or funny shaped forms or whatever, this rotating ability will catch an edge, and then you got some holes in there. You just there's a sighting window there.
Yep. I see it.
So you can find a survey mark, and then a couple of screws there will set it in place. Similar on this side, right? So you just find your survey marks. It literally 5 to 7 minutes to hang 4 anchor bolts.
I know it's such a simple idea, but it just why haven't we had this sooner?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually, when I got the idea, I convinced myself that somebody would have patented something like this already.
I know the amount of uses for this is insane, and now it's the amount of uses. And I know what the other thing I was really impressed about when I first saw it is you have different diameters for your bolts, right?
Yeah. So we've got these elements that will hold the bolts that slide within the rail, and they set in place with a couple of screws as well. But these guys, I mean, you can snap these out and you can add more. So if you're doing base plates that had 6 or 8 or 10 anchor bolts, you can just keep adding more of the holders into the rail. And then these guys, I'm going to try and show you guys here, but so it goes from a 3/4 inch hole, and I can pop out one sleeve and it goes to a 1 inch hole, and I can pop out a second sleeve and it goes to a 1/4 inch hole. So I can do 3 different bolt diameters. And if you've got something intermediate between those sizes or a little bit smaller than a 3/4 inch bolt, just a little bit of masking tape wrapped around the bolt takes up the slack. So you can use it with 5/8 bolts and, things like that. 1 1/8.
So really flexible. The first prototypes that you design, I mean, what is that? That's foam board that you're using, isn't it? Is that
this is LVL?
You're using LVLs.
Yeah. It's very high quality. It's extremely rigid.
Exterior use protected, weather protected. Yeah.
So we wanted to use something. We tested some materials. This was really dimensionally stable, even when it got wet. It takes a screw really well, and it's because there's a whole bunch of different ways you can use this product. Even taking the one support and setting it to a position and screwing it in and cutting off this excess portion, you can cut this down to whatever length you want. And because that's LVL, it's easy to do in the field. So if you needed to slip this inside the form, so if you're pouring concrete low in the form, you can custom length this, just set the support where you need it, cut the excess off. You just flip this around this way so you can slip it in the form and rest it on a ledge that you'd screw into the form. We have photos of it on the website of people using it like that. So really, really flexible.
And you have the space, so when you put the vibrators in, you can see what you're doing.
You can still work it, exactly. So there's that space that's allowing you to do that. So even in tight forms, you can still have access to everything.
Yeah, that's the one thing we're hearing. It's easier to get the concrete in. It's easier to get the vibrators in. It's easier to finish the concrete around this. If you look at the support, the way it was designed, so this sits on the edge of your form or on the whaler around your form. It gives you an inch from the top of the form to the underside of this bolt rail to get in with a hand trowel and finish the concrete. So that was not by accident. That was from consultations with the industry, and that's what they were saying, is that they have trouble finishing the concrete underneath the templates. And if we could design this thing with a little bit of a space underneath it, that would go a long ways towards making the usability and finishing the concrete better. So that's what we did.
So I'm thinking, I mean, obviously this is more for commercial and industrial applications, but there's still some times that you'll see it in a residential application that you might need this as well, depending on what we're building. I'm hoping that you're probably working on something that we can make all of our concrete foundation guys put the J bolts in the right spot when they're doing regular that.
That's what we're hoping for. It's and when you start doing something like this, there's a lot of research and consultation with the industry. And once we had the patent, when we could talk about the idea and show them diagrams of what we were sort of designing, we started to hear all kinds of interesting things. Most guys that do concrete work, they're counting on that they're going to bend anchor bolt straight. So at least some of them are going to go out of whack. And sometimes what happens is, they'll build the template, the anchor bolt will be hanging there, and as the concrete goes in, the top may stay sort of where it needs to go, but the bottom may go out. So once, you can't put that base plate down because, the top is where it needs to be, but the bottom of the anchor bolt is out.
Yep.
So as it comes down. So that's one issue that we've come across. Most guys are, spending some time, at least after they pour concrete, trying to straighten anchor bolts. So there's lost time in that. They put some nuts over the threads to protect them inside. There's sledgehammers or pipes to try and bend them straight. And there's a bit of a compromising of steel there if you're cold working that anchor bolt, once the concrete cures. But the most concerning thing we've sort of come across is that sometimes what happens is that bolts go out when the concrete goes in, and they just straighten them while the concrete's sort of wet. And depending on, what's going on when you vibrate it, et cetera, you can end up creating voids around that anchor bolt. So, there's some quality control and safety issues associated with that, which we're trying to eliminate those issues with this product.
There's a lot of pressure going on when it's an actual concrete pour, right? And you've got a lot of, people going at the same task, and then it's easy to forget and not make sure that the bolts are straightened up. But I mean, now I'm looking at your product and it kind of just gets rid of all that. It literally is part of the forming, where it's like, if the forming's straight, then the bolt rail is straight, then the bolts are straight, then everything's straight, then we actually move on to the next stage, right?
Well, we have the ability to get things straight, even if the form is a bit out. We have some room to even level the bolt rail when we install it. So, and that's been a big hit with some of the guys who are using it.
How are you doing that? Is it you can level it on a plumb plane? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we sometimes, if the forms are sort of out, if they've shifted when we're installing it, we can just throw a level on it, and before we screw in the sides, we can
you can adjust it. Yeah.
So we can adjust it. So that's really nice. There's another advantage from a quality control perspective. If something is out of alignment or out of position, it's really easy to fix. We had one guy installing, and he just measured wrong, and he had these things out by an inch. And for us to fix the mistake was 2 minutes of undoing some fasteners, moving things, and fastening it back down. But if you were, let's say you had a template built from lumber, and you've got a 1 inch diameter hole that's a half of an inch off of where it's supposed to be. New template, right?
Yeah, this is basically what happens.
Hard to fill that out.
Yeah.
But with this, it's a 1 to 2 minute job to fix it. So your last minute quality control survey checks, you've got this great flexibility to adjust things on the fly, right?
And I know that you talked earlier about how a lot of the crews are reusing it, and I could see it being reused, unless you're just caking it, with a bunch of concrete on it. It's just, I guess, a mistake or whatever at that point. But even at that point, when you unsecure it, remove it when the concrete's cured the next day or whatever, you just tap it, I guess, with a hammer and all.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
The guys who want to get a lot of uses out of it, they oil it like they would oil their formwork.
Okay. All right. So then the concrete doesn't even stick.
Yeah.
Which is great. Okay.
Yeah, it's proving to be just big efficiencies, big labor savings, huge schedule gain, better quality control, cost savings. At least you're not even buying the lumber to build the templates, right? So right off the bat, you're starting to save less survey time. So you're saving money on surveying as well. We've heard some really interesting things at the trade show. We heard one guy.
Why was this not here 20 years ago? I would have needed this.
Yeah. I believe that totally. Yeah. I mean, because now I'm trying to think of, when I'm looking at it and I'm trying to put myself in the position of actually using it, installing it, and working it. I don't see anything negative. I don't see anybody, like, if you come across a tradesperson who says, we've been doing it this way for so long, it works, we don't really need that. Well, that's a useless tradesperson, because they don't understand the value behind this. So there's nothing negative attached to this. Sorry?
No.
It basically it's true.
Time is money. Like, I think you said there was a job where you finished earlier and everyone had to look busy for I don't know how many hours, because they were done. They're like, I don't know how we.
That's my thought is I can see people using the bolt rail, and I can see the concrete crews after the concrete's poured, and everyone's just twiddling thumbs. They're having a coffee. They're chilling out.
Yeah.
We had a job, they used it at a remote site, and they had budgeted 2 days of time for a crew of 3 to build templates and set anchor bolts in place. And that was when they bid the job. And then at some point they decided, hey, we want to give this a try. And so they ordered some bolt rails from us. And instead of the 2 days they had budgeted, they were done in less than 2 hours. And so, but the problem was,
were they paid for the 2 days?
Materials.
They weren't paid for the 2 days.
They were on a remote site, and there was no more material coming for 2 days, because that's how they had scheduled it.
Got it.
And for 2 days now on this remote site, with they're on the client site, and they had to look busy, so they kept just measuring over and over the placements of the bolts.
Just keep moving.
So one company told us they got late access to a site, and they got all the formwork up, but they were done. It was a smaller job, but they got it done right as the concrete was arriving, and they hadn't built like templates, but they had bolt rail, and they were able to keep ahead of the pour. So while they were setting the bolts on one pile cap, they were pouring one pile cap, they were able to set the next pile cap. And then while that pile cap was being poured, they were able to set the next pile cap. So literally,
that's how fast we're talking about.
That's how fast they were going, yeah. And they said that was, if it hadn't been for the product, they would have had to cancel the pour. We've had a couple couple now where people have said if it hadn't been for this product, they would have canceled the pour or delayed the pour.
And that gets expensive.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you're already consuming the cost of the pour, right? Like you got to start negotiating at that point because they can't use it anywhere else. Oh, okay.
Well, and the loss of schedule too, Manny. Like if you don't get, I mean, it's like a dominoes when you schedule a construction job. Yeah. You pull out one of the pieces of it, and everything stops, right?
So I guess your primary feedback at the very early days was mostly from site supers and owners that were basically figuring out, wait a minute, we just saved half a day, a full day, and we're ahead now of the schedule.
Yeah. Well, we had like the very first job it was used on. They had budgeted somewhere in the 100 to 150 hours of template building and anchor bolt setting. They were done in about 12 hours.
That's insane.
So it's very significant, yeah.
Plus the work. Sorry.
Have much experience too, right? Like you said.
Yeah, it's a good point. We had a couple of guys who'd never built templates or set anchor bolts before in their lives. Set anchor bolts with this. As long as you've got a surveyor working with you saying, here's your center line, it's just so easy to put together. You're just using a cordless screw gun. You're not building anything. It's ready to go. The time you would take to measure out a template or mark where things go, you've already set it while you're doing that.
But you guys
you're measuring it and setting it at the same time.
Yeah, you guys have eliminated the guesswork of what the final product's going to be.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about, I hope that turned out well for the next crew that comes in, starts anchoring, right?
Yeah.
And it's more like, no, it's turned out well. It actually works. Now we can move on to the next stage. I love that. I want to get into the nitty gritty of the actual product, but let me do a little bit of history and construction here. I'm fascinated by history or engineering, right? So I wanted to ask you guys, who was the very first engineer in the world ever? Outside of the Bible, if you want to get into God and stuff like that.
I think probably if I had to take a guess, I would say it's probably the first guy who built a bow and arrow.
You're going that far back. Okay, I'm going a little earlier than that. So it's MHOTEP. The first engineer known by name and achievement is, I don't know how you pronounce that, but builder of the Step Pyramid in Egypt, probably about 2550 BC. He's technically the very first engineer that came up with stuff, right? How did engineering begin? The concept of engineering has existed since ancient times as humans devised fundamental inventions such as pulley, lever, and wheel. Each of these inventions is consistent of the modern definition of engineering, exploiting basic mechanical principles to develop useful tools and object. What is the oldest type of engineering out there?
Civil?
Yeah, civil. Often thought to be the oldest engineering discipline, civil engineering focuses on constructing, designing, and maintaining physical structures used by the public, such as dams, bridges, tunnels, roads, airports, subway systems, and water supply system. And I desperately need a proper civil engineer here in Toronto. If you guys can send someone, that'd be amazing. Because they're failing in all those categories right now. Dams, bridges, tunnels, roads, airports, everything. They're failing in all that stuff, right? So who was the very first female engineer? Edith Clark.
I have no idea. No.
Edith Clark. So she is the very first female engineer. Born in 1883, she created the Clark calculator for graphene electrical properties. She used her inheritance from deceased parents to attend college and study mathematics. Wow. So that's a little bit of history in construction. Let me do another shout out. I got to do another shout out to a plumber friend of mine, Rob from Galaxy Plumbing. He wants to help. They do rough-in plumbing and installing plumbing fixtures, underground drains and water service, upgrades for underpinning projects, drain camera inspections before finishing your basement. The more complicated, the more Galaxy wants to help. Please reach out to them at on IG, which is Galaxy Plumbing Inc. His email is rob@galaxyplumbinginc.ca, and his website is galaxyplumbinginc.ca. And of course, listen to his show on show number 33, and you can get to his whole story behind everything. So back to you guys now. Where is the product going now? What do you guys? Because I'm assuming that has it gone past the integration point? Like the industry's already embracing this now. Like this is
slowly. I mean,
pass me the hammer, pass me the bolt rail. Basically, we've gotten to that point.
Not yet. We're I mean, we just started launching our big marketing campaign last year. In the spring was the first time we started to get out and show it. And then the first big show that we went to was Vegas in January. So it was very well received there. We had really a lot of interest from guys who were doing industrial commercial work, but also we had a guy who spent 30 years installing elevator machines, and he said that those anchor bolts, they're always 1.25 inches. They're always they got to go in precisely. You can't bend an 1.25 inch anchor bolt straight afterwards. So. No. And he had retired, but he said like if he wished he had this product when he was doing the task back then. So right now we're growing sales. We're talking to some retailers. We're trying to build demand and awareness at the same time as because if somebody wants to use it right now, we have to send the product to them directly. But we're trying to get to a point and get the attention of some retailers so that we can work on the advertising and awareness campaign, but then the product is available in the showroom when they need it. They don't have to have it shipped from Edmonton, Alberta, which is where we make this product.
Yep.
That it's available. Companies like National Concrete Accessories, HD Supply, White
I love
Cap,
National. Yeah, they're great.
I mean, if those guys could, see this podcast, say, hey, this is a great thing we need to bring to our clients.
Have you spoken to them already, or why wouldn't they just say, yeah, sure?
Yeah, we've tried.
Okay.
We just haven't reached the right guy. So you go to the trade show and you approach the booth, and it's very difficult to find the right person in a big company. Everybody's busy, and it's tough to do a cold call with an email. Like they really need to see this thing in person and have 15 minutes with you for you to explain that to you and whatnot. So
I don't want to dismiss the concrete guys out there, because I have a lot of respect for the concrete guys and girls out there that work in the industry, but anything that comes along that makes their day shorter and they can still get paid for the full day, they taking it. They're grabbing it. They're hugging it. They're using it. They love it.
Yeah. The guys who've seen it and who start using it love it. They keep coming back for more.
Yeah.
And we're slowly growing the customer base. But right now, like we're not in any retail outlets yet. We're talking to a retailer in Atlantic Canada, a big one in the US right now. And it's interesting because coming out of the show in Vegas, we're talking to a distributor retailer in New Zealand. We're talking to a company in South Africa that wants to carry it. So we're starting to get some international attention for the product, which is really exciting.
Well, I mean, America is a big concrete place. So is Canada. But I mean, I'm thinking globally, you got much bigger markets that are just all concrete. Everything's mostly concrete.
Some countries are like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're not... the United States represents about 1/6 of the world economy, so that's going to be a big market for us.
So it was well received, and then I guess now they're starting to use it. You're sending it out there, and sales are starting to grow.
Yeah. We've got a job coming up near Cold Lake. We're just going to be shipping the product out early next week. We've got a job on Monday where it's going to be used about 45 minutes outside of Edmonton. So we've got a couple of companies bidding on big jobs, and if they land it, they want to use it. We're talking 1,500 plus anchor bolts.
So any crews that are listening right now, just look at it this way: you can price it the old way, build it the new way, and make more money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
basically, right?
So yeah,
that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, even on a small job, we saw, we were getting reports from guys who were using it, savings in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars.
I believe it. So, yeah. Back to the elevator, I had a quick question. Would you have designed something that would actually be the footprint of the whole elevator? Like that's the idea, is that you would just drop a bolt rail that's the size of the elevator and then everything's lined up perfectly?
Not quite. So we've had some uses where, like, if you're doing a big pad like that for the base of some big machine, but you need to set anchor bolts in it.
Yeah.
You can take something, you can take one of the sizes of this. We had a guy who wanted to do, who did like a 14-foot wide footing or something like that, but he needed anchor bolts in the middle. So he took a pair of 2x4s and screwed them onto the sides of this. And he basically used this in the middle and used the 2x4s to suspend across this big footing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can do stuff like that. There's a way to actually even set anchor bolts in the middle of a continuous pour slab with this thing. You can suspend it above the slab where you're pouring, if you have to have cast in anchors in a slab. That's a difficult thing everybody struggles with that if they get that kind of a job. So you can just put some threaded rod in the ground and suspend a pair of 2x4s.
I see it. Yeah, I totally see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you rest this on the 2x4s, and those 2x4s don't even have to be square or parallel or anything. You just got to get them somewhere in the vicinity. The adjustability of this thing allows you to get those anchor bolts exactly where they need to go, regardless of what the support structure geometry looks like. So tons of ways that you can use it. If anybody's interested, we can provide information, pamphlets, booklets. There's stuff you can
just reach out to you guys, right? And then I was curious, do you guys want to share what the costs are behind these, or the parameters on price point?
Yeah, you're in the like mid 40 to mid 50, depending on the length you're buying.
Okay.
Canadian dollars. So, starting with the shortest one around 45, and then going to the longest one around 55.
It's not crazy.
So, no, it's reasonable, and we're making it a pretty high quality material. So, and we've seen a huge increase in our material costs in the last couple of years. But that reusability and the labor savings and the schedule gain. Let's say you get a pair of them for $90, you get 3 uses out of it, and you've done 3 pile caps at $30 a pile cap in about 5 to 7 minutes of time.
It's a lot of money being saved, a lot of time being saved.
Yeah, it's way ahead of current standards, current costs.
How many times are you seeing the trades reusing them? Are they getting as high as 3 times, or are they even getting further than that?
Everybody's different. Some guys I've seen, up to 7 reuses on a single job, and they've told us that they could probably do 2 jobs with it.
Wow.
If you use it cleanly and take care of it. We've heard guys say, "Oh yeah, we could get like 20. We could oil it and get 20 uses out of it." Then they start using it, and then a year or 2 later, they're like, "You know what? Like once we get 2-3 uses out of it, it's more than paid for itself." And and then we recycle it and get some more. So.
I mean, at that price point, it's definitely paid for itself, right? Like I was expecting a higher number, to be very honest. I just figured that because of the amount of time and savings that you're putting into the task, it would be worth more. But that's just me.
You mean like from a retail price?
Yeah, a retail price. Yeah.
You know what? We want to bring it in at a price point where somebody will look at this and go, "I was going to spend that much money anyways." But then I can get if I get 1 reuse out of it, I'm still way ahead of the game, sort of thing. So we want to get it to a point where it's it's like the Kleenex of tissue, right? When you think about setting anchor bolts, you're not gonna. I mean, the idea of buying lumber to chop it up and build a template that you're going to use once and chuck doesn't make any sense.
And hope it's straight.
Yeah. So we want people to not even consider that. If they can use this product, it makes a lot more sense to do that. Reusable, fast, accurate, better quality control.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind, yeah. I don't want to, I mean, it's people, some people think this is a really simple task to set anchor bolts in place.
No, it's not. No.
It's not, but not only that, but it's the last critical step when you're getting out of the ground. If you get your anchor bolts right, the rest of your project falls into place.
100%. Yes.
If you get it wrong, then you've got problems. And the thing is, like, if you can't stand the steel up when the steel erectors come and they can't stand the steel up, they say, "Okay, well, fix it and we'll be back," right? Yeah. But I can't come back for 6 or 8 weeks because they're booked solid, right? Yep. So now you've got, you can have weeks of delay. I mean, we know one company that's being, they were responsible for setting the anchor bolts, but the mistakes in the anchor bolt setting delayed the project by a couple of months. And when you're building a process facility and you knock 2 months of revenue out of the client's pocket, well, they're not going to be too happy about that, right?
Right? But if you save a bunch of money while you're using this product, and then you're more efficient and you get out of the hole, when we're in construction, that's the one thing that we want to achieve. Once you start demo and you start excavating, the first thing everybody's mind, get out of the hole, start building. Yeah. That's what we want to do. Exactly. That's the objective, right? And then, like you just said, you want to get out successfully, right? And then you can start building the structure from that point. I'm just trying to think of any residential applications for your product here, or making it. Not DIYer. I don't want to give this to DIYers. They just stay away from it. But I'm just thinking.
Well, you know what? It's. I mean, even for do it yourself, or it makes life easier. But so, I mean, I don't know how you guys build in Toronto, but here in Alberta, a lot of our houses, we have basements under everything.
Yeah, so yeah, we're the same.
Yeah, and it's mostly wood framed on top of concrete.
Yep.
And so a lot of load bearing walls, not a lot of columns and anchor bolts in the house construction here. But if you're building in earthquake zones, West Coast California, I mean, a lot of the structures there, or custom homes that are out of the norm, you'll have as soon as you have columns and anchor bolts, this thing has a place. Residential, not right. So
you're anchoring. You need it at that point, and you go, like you said, you go back to the old way of doing it. You got tradespeople who are just stack of wood, chop it up, form it, hope and a prayer, right? Yeah. So we don't need the hope and a prayer anymore. We just need the boat rail. That's all it is. You pop it in place. Basically, is what it is. It's an easy. That's why I love it. When I first saw it, I was like, "This is genius. This is perfect. It's wonderful, right?"
But that's the thing. That's one thing that we hear a lot of guys using it for the first time is this is so easy. That's communicated a lot. So. You're working on a remote site, or you're working in a muddy site in spring or after a storm or something. The last thing you want is complexity, and you're trying to build something on site. If this thing just goes off the back of the truck onto the form and it snaps in place and screws down. So,
what else can you share that you're working on? Because I can only assume guys like yourselves, like, you come up with something great. Now you got to come up with something else.
we applied for another patent.
Nice, beautiful.
But I'm until the patent comes through, I'm going to be tight-lipped about what we're doing.
No. But I love hearing that there's you're evolving. Yeah. I love it that you've come up with this. Yeah,
we're developing another product, but the one thing that we keep getting. So this thing right now can handle up to 1.25 inch anchor bolt, and the one thing that we keep hearing at trade shows and when we show it is, do you have a bigger version of this? And so. For larger bolts.
What size are we talking about here? For what kind of structures? How much of a diameter are we asking for?
Yeah, 1.5, 1.75, up to 2.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, because those bolts, there's no way those are budging once they're set, right?
Yeah.
And they get pretty heavy. You can, some of these things are 6, 7, 8 feet long, pretty big bolts. So we are looking at developing a heavy duty version of this, scaled up, thicker LVL, bigger, more robust everything that would handle the next 3 sizes of bolts after 1.25. So that may be in the works in the next year or two. So.
And you'd be doing the same, I guess, increments of length, or no? You wouldn't need to go as small as the smallest one that you have right now.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to go 26, but we might start at the 35 or 45 and go up from there. So. And we were going to go to 1.75 inch LVL instead of the 1.5 inch as well. So
I want to go back to the very beginning when you started building your prototypes at first. What were you just using 2x4? Were you just using whatever lumber was in the shop or something?
No, I can show you. I got 2 prototypes here. Well, technically,
here we go. Okay.
I'll show you the first one. We built this first proof of concept out of MDF.
Out of MDF?
Yeah, it's just machined MDF.
Okay.
But the original concept had a groove where everything could sort of come out of. So the support and then the pieces that would hold the bolts were originally designed with a flange
on
the bottom.
Okay.
So they would drop in, and then as soon as you got past that opening, they're locked on, right? So. But for manufacturing reasons, to make manufacturing a little bit simpler, we went to a system that can just snap in from the top anywhere and then just screws down. So this was the first proof of concept prototype that we built.
You need to, Arda, you need to sell that concept there for toilet bolts.
For what?
Toilet bolts. When you're installing a toilet, they never stay in the same spot, and so they're always moving around. So if you can lock in those toilet bolts, I'm just saying.
You know what? There's we've thought about making like really small versions of bolt rail for like all the electrical plugs in parking lots and things like that.
So that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant.
So, and then the very first one that was used in the field was this. So we just wanted to see that if we had this product And so you can see this is made out of basically
glulam or whatever it is.
Yeah, like wood chips.
Or
and glue
an LSL, like an LSL kind of material.
Exactly. So this was just like, we brought it to site. We set some bolts just to see like how fast would this go, right? And so I've got video of this first use, and the guys are putting it in, and it's a 5-minute long video, and they're done. And so that was sort of the first time we thought, okay, if we got to site with a prefab template that was adjustable, but we didn't even have the swivels or anything like that, right? This is just made out of wood. Before we had injection molds. How fast could we set 4 anchor bolts was the question we were trying to answer, and we were 5 minutes. Sorry.
You were doing it. You were taking care of it in 5 minutes when the normal tradesperson was taking how long to do it?
We hear anything from half an hour to 2 hours.
Okay.
So on the low end, if they're doing a really loosey-goosey sort of a job, some guys tell us half an hour. Most guys are telling us that it takes them half an hour just to build the template. And on the low end, by the time they position everything, 45 minutes to an hour. Some guys are, with bigger bolts and more complicated jobs, up to 2 hours to get bolts set, build the template and position it and everything. So, but 45 minutes to an hour is not an uncommon amount of time to budget. That first job that was one of the first jobs where it was used, the spreadsheet they sent us, they had an hour and a half per pile cap to build the templates and get everything positioned and hang all the bolts and everything like that. So that was in their estimate,
But that already pays for your bolt rail, because you have to pay that person for an hour and a half.
Yes.
The wage, build it and set everything. So that alone already pays for your bolt rail right there. And then if you reuse it, it's money in your pocket.
Once if you get past the idea of, hey, this is more expensive than the plywood that I'm going to use. But when you start to consider the savings in surveying, the savings in labor, the quality control, the less mistakes, the schedule gain, etc., it's just not even a comparison.
No, it's much cheaper. And then you haven't even brought up time yet. Like time is the most valuable part of a construction site. So it's just like you're already saving a lot there based on that, just that one detail, right?
Huge, yeah. It's very significant.
I totally agree. Let me share a little bit of OBC talk here, guys. In a legal basement rental unit, what is the size of a window area for a bedroom? Any idea? Based on the OBC, which is actually similar to your building code as well, too.
I don't know off the top of my head. No, 30-inch.
It's 5% of the floor area. So whatever your floor area is, that's the minimum OBC requirement is 5% of glass area. So for argument's sake, so if you've got a 100 square foot floor area space, you would require 5% of that floor area, and that's the size of the window you would need. That's the bare minimum. You can make it larger. Again, in a legal basement rental unit, what is the size of egress unit required? So as per 9.9.10.1 under the OBC egress windows and doors for bedrooms, A is openable from the inside without use of any tools, provides an individual unobstructed open portion having a minimum area of 0.35 meters square with no dimension less than 380 millimeters. And then the last point is maintains the required opening described in clause B without the need of additional support. So it's literally, if there's an emergency, you have to have this minimum space of 0.35 meters square and accessible without any tools or ladders or steps or anything like that to access it. And then the question is, are you required an egress window if you have an entry that actually exits right outside of the dwelling? I actually didn't know this, but you actually don't need an egress window as a secondary exit point to exit a structure if the actual entryway is directly outside. It gets you right outside. So just something to note when you're building basements and you want to make them legal. Those are little notes. What else you guys want to chat about? What else don't I know about Boltrail? I'm always curious about what else you guys are dreaming up, but I know you can't share. Until it comes out.
Yeah, no, we've got another product.
You can tell me after we stop recording, right? So, and I won't share with anybody. But I mean, I'm always curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big challenge for us right now is the awareness campaign, right? Because this is something that's never existed before. But I mean, when people who do this task for a living, when they see this, they're really blown away. Like, this really makes life easy for them. So with the awareness campaign, we're trying to build up our customer base so that we can attract the attention of the retailers, so that when the customers want it, that we're not shipping it from here direct to them, that they can have it locally available, right? So this is our next big hurdle, is to try and sign on some retailers and distributors so that we can get this to more people.
Are you getting more interest from this side of the country or from your side of the country? I'm just assuming with BC being a lot closer to you guys, they're using it more often, and they have, like you mentioned earlier, that seismic component, right?
Yeah, Alberta, BC is currently, I guess, our biggest sort of market, but we're starting to get orders out of the States, and then it looks like we've got samples that we're about to send to New Zealand. So we met a really lovely guy, and he saw us online. He searched us out at World of Concrete in Vegas.
Nice.
He's been fantastic to deal with, and he sees a lot of potential for it in New Zealand. And so we're about to send him some samples. So we could become an international company here in the next little while. So that's pretty exciting.
I love it that it's another great idea coming out of Canada, from people that are from abroad and then came up with it here. It's just we don't want to tell the Americans that just yet, right?
Well, they've been. It's we were kind of worried, like, hey, are they going to embrace the Canadian product? They're really great. We were welcomed with warm, open heart. They love the fact that it's not made overseas.
Oh, really? Okay, so all right, that's a good point.
But and the other thing is, we have this, we've got this great relationship with the United States. So like the LVL that we're using, a lot of it is made in the U.S. So we buy the LVL, we make the Boltrail, we sell it back to them. Maybe
so technically it's a Canadian-U.S. product, right? Yeah. But I mean, bottom line, when they look at the numbers, you can't argue it, right? That's the thing about it. So we have to use it.
Yeah. Now, if we can build up demand down south of the border, I could see a second manufacturing facility in the U.S. at some point. It's very interesting. Like, they have 11 times our population in the U.S. compared to Canada.
Yeah.
But they have 25 times our construction spending.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that we discovered when we were researching things. That the market in the U.S. is so big that for every one that we sell in Canada, we have the potential to sell 20 to 25 in the U.S. Wow. So it's not that they have a different attitude towards business in the U.S. And it's pretty great. Like they have 11 times our population, but they have, a disproportionate amount of business and construction happening.
So what's going on in Canada that's not or what's going on in the U.S. that's not going on in Canada? I don't understand why we're not ramping up our construction. We should be.
You know what? I have a lot of ideas about that. Part of it is, I think, just business culture. I don't think we're not as friendly to business here in Canada. We make business a bit more difficult.
I agree.
Yeah. We have a very, very large land mass. We don't have the population, right?
Well, it's mostly concentrated in two areas, basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love that. Well, you're even though you're using some of the material from the U.S., but you're still manufacturing in your backyard. Like, it's being developed there, right? And then it's being shipped out of there, which is great that you haven't pulled that trigger of saying we're going to go overseas and just take care of it there. No,
you know what? It was important for us to do something that would help our economy. We didn't want to farm it out to some other place, even if there was more profit margin in it for us, but we do things well here in Canada, right?
I agree.
And when something happens, I can go and talk to the guys who are building it, or I can go and talk to the wood supplier or whatever. Like, that face-to-face interaction is important. But, if we're doing something that's going to take off and make a lot of money, we want it to benefit Canada and the United States.
Yeah.
Well, all right. We live here. We got to take care of our industry. So,
can I ask a stupid question? Is the
no
government
such thing?
Well, my question starts with, is the government helping you guys out or being supportive or looking at this as an option? Like, we should be contributing.
Yes. So when we were ready to jump from a final design product into the manufacturing, there was a big cost there.
Yeah.
And it took weeks and weeks, but we went through an application process with an organization called Alberta Innovates.
Okay.
And we got some government funding that covered a portion of our jump into, and it made it, it sped things up. Like for me to generate the revenue to do that would have taken years, but to get the grant and then having to contribute basically a quarter of it, it really put us some years ahead, you know, and
great
helped
to hear.
us jump into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's all kinds of other incentives for marketing and getting products to, you know, overseas or foreign markets. There's funding available for automation purposes and things like that. So, yeah, it's great. There's some resources there that we've relied on, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more in the future for expanding. So, yeah.
Is that like, I mean, that's your office space right now, but is the warehouse where you're actually producing, is it right there as well too? Is it behind you guys? No. Okay.
No. It's in a facility about 10 minutes away.
Okay. And then you've got a staff. Is it just growing and growing? Is that the idea now?
Well, it's no, it's not huge right now. But there's a sales side, and then there's a manufacturing side. So, and we're the sales side. We're the face of the product. We're the guys that you're going to call. Mel's actually our head salesperson. So
Yeah.
if you have questions about the product or you want to make an order, you reach out to Mel, and
I'll provide all the information, any questions asked or samples.
And where did the name come from? Like, how did you guys just come up and say that's what we're going to call it?
Oh, we were looking at all kinds of things, and you know, in the beginning, Bolt Buddy was one of them. And so
there's already a lot of Bolt Buddies on the job site.
Yeah. So yeah, and then just we were thinking, and we're bouncing ideas off, and even from the guys who were at the government at Alberta Innovates. You know, they were even helpful and like, hey, like you should pick something like this and like that. And I was talking to a senior guy at a construction company who was really a lovely man who was quite helpful. And, you know, when I was developing this, and I was bouncing name ideas and marketing ideas off of him. And he was saying, you know, like it's got to be professional sounding, you know, blah, blah. And so, and one day I was just like, you know what, Boltrail. And I called him up and I said, what do you think about Boltrail? And I was like, that's it. He's like, that's the name. So
I do agree. It makes sense. It actually, it sounds legit. It sounds like it sounds like a tool. It sounds like you're grabbing a component that you need to build with. That's what it sounds like.
And it explains the tool itself.
It does. Totally does.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been quite a fun journey to go through, to see it from like initial hand sketches to, you know, to a final product coming out. You know, I have another prototype back there, but it doesn't look any different. We did some pieces out of 3D printed parts to test how things would fit and work at some point. And so, what did
your dad ultimately say when he saw the final product and through all the iterations of?
Oh, you know, he's been very encouraging from the start. He's got a never quit sort of attitude in life, with everything. You know, I'm a first generation Canadian.
Yeah.
And so I saw my parents, you know, started a new life, and you know, we came here with a few $100s and a couple of suitcases, you know. But he's a highly educated guy. You know, he had that to rely on. He was a university professor at one point. But he's just inspirational. Just a really good guy, never quit attitude, just hardworking like you wouldn't believe, you know. So yeah, he's still encouraged. He's like, no matter what, he's like, this is a good idea. He's like, don't quit. I'm like, there's no quit in me. We're going, we're selling, we're growing, you know, we're there, you know. But he's doesn't fit your show, but he's developed some fascinating patented ideas.
What kinds of
chemical?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he's a chemical engineer, and he developed a very novel, inexpensive way to settle toxic tailing ponds in the oil sands industry.
Oh, okay.
And he thinks differently than everybody else in that industry, because he's not a mining engineer, he's not a geotechnical engineer. He's got some really specific in-depth knowledge with water chemistry and things like that. But then he's also developed a process by which to increase the efficiency of oil mining here in Alberta. We inject steam into the ground and suck oil out here for part of our mining. And He's developed a way to make that far more efficient. So greatly reduced greenhouse gas emissions, energy requirements, water requirements. And it's just the most brilliant, simple idea. He just he's got a really beautiful mind. He just thinks very differently than most people. So,
I'm very respectful for your province because I'm seeing a lot of interesting, innovative, new ideas coming out of that province for like fuel and cleaning and keeping things proper, and even your product and what you just mentioned there. I'm seeing a lot of that come out of that province, and I mean, like I keep on joking about it. I would just love for it to rash over to the rest of the provinces, specifically Ontario, because we desperately need it.
Yeah, I think we're a pretty hardworking province.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of innovative go-getters out here. It's a very, we don't have a huge population. Alberta is only about 4 million people.
Okay.
But there's some really, we have a very thriving business community here.
So let me ask you guys this, Arda. I mean, when you were assembling the barbecue, and someone actually came up to you and said, "Oh, by the way, this idea is going to take you 7 years," how would you have felt then? Because you didn't think it was going to take that long.
It wouldn't have changed anything.
Okay. The drive was there. The passion was still there to pull it off.
Yeah. And I mean, I think two things. If for anybody who's just thinking about launching a product and patenting something, the time required is one thing, and then the costs required were the other thing. Those are the two things that I was naive about. It's been a lot of work, and there's been a substantial cost aspect to getting it to this stage. But if you're prepared for it, and you got a good idea, I mean, even if this thing didn't succeed, it's been such an amazing journey of learning. It's really exciting, So even from that perspective, it's been a hoot. So
you're excited about the prospect in the next 100 years. There's always going to be a boat rail on site.
I hope so.
I can see that. How can you not? I can see it. I could totally see that being.
Well, who knows? Maybe in 100 years, it's a bunch of robots that are working out their steady.
But they'll still be handling boat rails.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Maybe. Yeah.
That'll be great.
So yeah, I don't know. The future concrete is going to be interesting. I think the first evidence we see of concrete use is about 2,500 years ago.
Yep.
When mixing. What was it? Silica with water, and it's, I think the first use of it, they start to see it in Arabia and whatnot. But then it's just 2,000 years ago, it's the Romans that really sort of start using it
perfecting it and making it a certain way. Yeah.
If you ever get a chance to travel, there's a city on the west coast of Turkey, on the Aegean, called Ephesus.
Okay.
And it's a 2,500-year-old city, and they've been excavating it out of the ground. It used to be a coastal city, and the city died because the being deposited, the water just moved too far away, and the trade died.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating place, and you want to talk about civil engineering and ingenuity. I mean, the roads are crowned to move water off of them after a rain.
I know.
Draining into gutters.
The thought process back then was amazing, that they were thinking that's what we needed to do. You couldn't make it straight; you had to make it crown.
Yeah. And pipes underground that carry the water away from the streets, aqueducts carrying water to public bathrooms to carry the waste away. Two-story library. There's a rumor there was across the street from the library. It was a brothel. There was a tunnel between them. So the men were like, "Hey, honey, I'm going to the library," and then they would go in the tunnel to the brothel.
I'm going to blame the tradesmen back then. They were probably the ones that built the brothel tunnel first, right? And then they took care of the aqueducts after that, right? Let's get the essentials done first.
It's a fascinating place if you ever get a chance.
Is it an abandoned city? No, it's not an abandoned city, right? It's just.
Well, I mean, you know what? They have a huge amphitheater.
Okay.
That still is used to put on concerts.
Where's it? Because I know that's your background, but isn't there a city in Turkey? It's a sound. It's underground. It's water. But it's a specific. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I'm trying to figure out exactly where it was. But apparently, it's the most precise sound environment that you can get into, and the way it was built with water and stone and everything like that. And I just, the name escapes me right now, but it is I don't know if it's in Istanbul, but it is in Turkey.
No, I haven't been to it, but you're talking about a piece of land that they're discovering the oldest, earliest human settlements and civilizations. Every major civilization and empire has sort of left their mark on that piece of land. So if you you want to go and experience some amazing cultural things. I mean, it's
I would
really
love
quite,
to.
yeah.
And the
I
food
hate
and the
to say
coffee, everything, right? It's just
the food, yeah.
yeah.
Prepare to put on weight if you go.
No, you'll be walking around. That's the difference.
Yeah.
We'll walk around and you'll burn it off, right? So
yeah, they have great food there, yeah, for sure.
let me do a little bit of Green Book talk here. I know that everybody knows that the fine for not wearing a hard hat in Ontario is $250. But how high can it possibly get if the MOL agent wants to make it high? Then $250. It could get as high as $1,000 fine for not wearing a hard hat on a job site. What is the typical fine for not using fall protection gear? Penalties can be as high as $12,675 per violation. But inspectors may adjust the fines. That depends on the seriousness of the violation. What are the penalties for non-compliance of OSHA? A person who is convicted of an offense under OSHA may be subject to a fine of up to $1.5 million for the corporation, $1.5 for the directors, million, and 12 months imprisonment. A fine of $500,000 for all other persons, and or up to 12 months imprisonment. How much can a supervisor be fined in Ontario? Any thought? The max. $500,000. A supervisor. And they could also be jailed up to 12 months. That's 0.66 the act under the regulations. And then what are the 4 consequences of non-compliance when it comes to safety? It is punitive fines, criminal proceedings, damage reputations, and sanctioning. So a lot of big corporations that work in construction are very familiar with these 4. So I just wanted to share with everybody else. We always joked, we've had a few guests on the show where they've been pinched by the hard hat. Minimum is $250 and max is $1,000 for not wearing a lid on your head, which you should be wearing a lid on your head, right?
Well, it's an inherently dangerous profession.
Of course. So we're talking to Arda and Mel from Boltrail, boltrail.com. Reach out to them at sales@boltrail.com. Also Arda at boltrail.com, and then Mel Jarecki, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Trust me, I'm bad with names. Ontario, Jarecki Jarecki at boltrail.com. And then also on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, find them. Anything else you guys want to share before we do the final 12 questions? We talked a lot.
You did, yeah.
We'll be going to the Dallas show.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be at the Highways show in Dallas, Texas in October. So
there's a highway trade show?
Yeah. And, everything that goes, certainly it's not highways related per se, but everything they build next to the highways that gets bolted down.
Yes.
So there's an application for all kinds of infrastructure work, for this product. So we're going to go and show it in Dallas, Texas.
When's that coming up?
It's in October.
In October. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, if you're in the area, come see us there. And,
I know that I've got a fan. She's always been bugging me to get to Austin because she wants me to build some things down there. And I'm like, I've never built in Austin. I don't know how I would start doing that. But I guess
I'm excited about going to Texas.
Yeah? Have you been before?
Yeah. I haven't. No, I have this romantic vision of this beautiful, place with desert and,
I've been to Houston. I've been to Houston, and there's red meat and everything. You order a salad and red meat shows up with it without you even asking for it.
Perfect.
So there's a lot of red meat, right? But then, that was my recollection of Texas and Houston. But guys, this has been great. Sorry?
I heard a story about it was an exchange student in Europe, and he was from Texas, and the prof was having everybody introduce themselves on the first day of class. There's a lot of international students in the class. So I had a friend in this class who told me a story. He was going around the room, and so this guy stands up. He's like, "I'm Tex," or "I'm Bob," or whatever his name was. He says, "I'm from Texas," and the prof says, "No." He says, "What country are you from?" And the guy was like, "I'm from Texas." So that part of it appeals to me. I love the fact that they're so.
They're there. That's all it is. Yeah. Great people, but they're there. Yeah. No. Yeah. All right, guys, you ready for these 12 questions?
I think so, yeah.
What is your favorite construction word?
Boltrail.
I'm gonna say skill.
Skill. What's your least favorite construction word?
Failure.
And I'm gonna say code. Because And there's a reason for that, because I hear a lot of, well, I built it to code, right? So when I hear that, I just think you built it to the lowest acceptable minimum standard that you could build it to, right?
I know. Glass of water on the edge of a table. That very corner there. Which brings up a point. I'm just interested. Is it worth entertaining the idea of getting this into code?
It's a possibility. We've had, at the trade shows, we've had people come from various jurisdictions who've struggled with anchor bolts on projects, and like, you know what, we could make this the standard in our,
I could see
county or town or city or whatever. So yeah, it's possible.
Interesting. What turns you on in construction, guys?
I've always loved just seeing this tangible, real thing come to life. It's really exciting to see it progress and become finished. And once it's finished, this thing that it interacts with the people and the community, right? It becomes an entity. So that's what I like.
Well,
and I guess achievement when you see it, like what you had, the idea that you had, and then it comes to your labor comes to fruition, and you see it, and like it's going to be there.
It's great feeling.
Nice. Oh, you achieved something, and you can just move on to your next project.
In a digital world where everything's zeros and ones, construction and buildings, this is a real tangible thing. It's pretty great.
That's why I was saying we're a ways off from the robots handling this. Like they'll handle some, but not this. Not yet. Not yet. It's coming. What turns you off in construction, guys?
Shortcuts.
Yeah, I'd say laziness, when people are lazy, and then
that's the German side of her talking.
I must say, I am German, and my dad's always been like in the industry, and so has my grandpa. Like he built his house after World War II, and like he took his holidays to get old bricks and from like the war and chopped off like all the mortar. And this house is still standing today, so it's always that accuracy. And if you do it right the first time, it will be there in time. But when people take shortcuts or are lazy, it's a failure from the beginning. You're just wasting time and energy, and someone else has to pick up the pieces. So
I agree totally. It's kind of sad that we're not building it the way it used to be built, and yet we travel to see what used to be built, and it's still there, which. Is that going to be happening in 100 years from now? We're traveling and looking at what's being built right now. We don't know.
Most of the structures, I'd say no, but some.
What is your favorite curse word, guys? We haven't been swearing, so it's up to you. You can keep it clean.
Well, I got a phrase a couple of phrases that I was going to share with you guys.
Sure.
So one of my friends used to say, "When the shit is free, all the flies come out." So
I like that one.
Yeah. And then I was doing some work in a remote community here in Alberta, and there was an old guy, and he threw out the phrase, and I just thought it was the funniest thing I'd heard. He said, "It's busier than a bull's ass in fly season." So there you go. There's an Alberta.
You can use that one down in Texas too.
Yeah, I might. Yeah, I might throw that around.
They'll love that one. Mel?
I guess I like the one. Does a bear shit in the woods? Don't ask that. That's always a good one as well. And somewhat clean.
What's your favorite vehicle in the entire world?
My dream vehicle is a Porsche 911, but I got a sweet spot for and I had a Honda CBR 600 motorcycle when I was in my early 20s. I rode it from here to California and back.
Nice.
So that bike has a little sweet spot in my heart. So
how many clicks would that? That's a big chunk of change there, kilometer wise.
Yeah,
there and back, no issues at all.
No, that thing ran at 6,000 plus RPM for days.
Yeah,
and it was a beautiful bike, very nimble, and it was a great trip. So,
Mel,
yeah,
mine is definitely the G-Wagon.
Okay, there we go.
And
bulletproof or not bulletproof?
Well, here we don't need a bulletproof yet.
No.
So, and Maserati is.
Which one?
The Ghibli, I think, is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not exactly sure. Okay, all right. Still a Ferrari engine, I think, in them. They're using Ferrari engines in Maserati. Yeah. What's your least favorite vehicle in the entire world?
For me, it was a Hyundai hatchback that I rented in Cuba many years ago.
Pony?
Sorry?
Would it have been a pony? Hyundai Pony?
No, it was smaller than that. It was like about a little bit bigger than a smart car sort of thing. It wasn't something that we get in North America.
Interesting. Okay.
And as soon as you hit about 70 or 80 kilometers an hour, the whole thing started to like shake and shimmy. It was just awful.
And then it just fear sets in, right?
Yeah, it was a bit scary. And yeah, so that's the one that stood out for me.
And Mel?
My least favorite car, anything that's slow, I guess I would say. I get in trouble here because sometimes I think it's the Autobahn, but it's not. So anything that slow is not.
We need an Autobahn. We need a Trans-Canada Autobahn somehow that we can just cannonball run right from one end to the other end. That's all.
It's great. It's so efficient when you're on there and you see people they know the way how to drive. Everyone moves over and it flows, and people always hear like, oh, it's the speed that kills people. No, it doesn't. It's bad driving.
Mel has a talent for getting speeding tickets, but also a talent for getting out of them.
Oh, you know what? One usually caters to the other. What construction sound or noise do you guys love?
I personally like the sound of sandpaper on wood.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, sawdust. I like that. It gives me memories of my dad always working in his garage and working on stuff. So I think that's usually what I associate with that.
What construction sound or noise do you guys hate?
I'm not a fan of jackhammers.
Yeah.
Loud.
When I'm trying to sleep in and someone's just.
Or pile driving. A lot of condo building and just pile driving, right? Right at 7 a.m. start.
Well, I was on a job site where they were doing that for some days. Yeah.
Okay, guys, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt one day?
One day.
I have a big love of analog film photography.
Really?
And, yeah, my dream is to retire someday and become a printmaker, a photographer, landscapes and whatnot, and do make prints in a studio. And
I think we only have 2 here in Toronto. I don't know how many labs you guys would have there, but I mean, analog is quickly dying.
Yeah, I do it by hand myself.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
But there's all these processes that have been lost into history that are really fascinating. So I'm interested in learning how to do these very vintage and alternative ways of making prints with old cameras and stuff. So that's my dream.
Nice. And Mel?
Mine was always lawyer, but then.
You want to be a lawyer one day?
That's why, yeah.
That's a first for this show.
Hey, that was always on my bucket list, but then I went into school to be a legal assistant, and after that, I was like, you know what? I think that's not my way to go. So,
what profession would you guys not like to do? Lawyer's been brought up a few times.
Politician for me.
Yeah, that's been brought up a few times.
Yeah, couldn't do it.
No.
I would not want to be a teacher. No.
Tough.
No.
That's a tough job. Yeah.
It's a tough.
Maybe with little kids up to like grade 1, and after that, I think that's it.
And the last question, if heaven exists, what would you guys like to hear God say when you arrive at those pearly gates?
The drinks are on the house.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
The pool is ready for you.
Nice. Guys, absolute pleasure having you guys on the show, and I wish you guys all the success. I love the product. Anybody in construction understands that this is a great idea for the industry. The industry needs it. So I wish you guys all the success, and I want to see it grow and become just the norm. That's it.
Thank you very much for your time and having us on.
Yeah,
Danny.
that's great. It was absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. And everybody reach out to them again. Please find them on the website, boltrail.com, and all over LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram under Boltrail, and then email them as well, too, at sales@boltrail.com, and then Arda@boltrail.com, and then Mel Jarecki @boltrail.com. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
you very much, May.
Thanks, Angelina. We're out of here.